Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Some of the, we did, if you missed it, we did some stuff on some of the guys that have entered the portal. Let's get to some of the commitments of the past few days, and there are certainly some big ones. Speaking of big, how about Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino, and St. John's? Okay, so St. John's, we talked last week. Josan Sanan, former five-star, commits to St. John's. Well, on Monday, they get the commitment from Bryce Hopkins. We've talked, by the way, I hinted at it on Sunday's show, but Bryce Hopkins, former Kentucky Wildcat, former Providence Friar, is officially a member of the St. John's Red Storm. So Bryce Hopkins, I think the story is fascinating. In some ways, it's really sad, but it is still fascinating nonetheless. Starts his career at Kentucky, doesn't work out, goes to Providence, is part of that team, Ed Cooley's team that ends up winning the Big East. Was he part of that team? I don't even remember. But part of Ed Cooley's, no, I take that back. He was part of Ed Cooley's last team at Providence, where he really, that year, emerged into an absolute star. This is Bryce Hopkins I'm talking about, but emerged into an absolute star for Providence. Last season, 2023-2024, so 2 seasons ago technically, really playing at an all Big East, All-American level, goes down with a knee injury, tries to come back, does not come back, and then, of course, tries to come back this year, plays in just a total of 3 games, averaging 17 points and 8 boards a game before he decides to shut it down. Now, the good news is he told reporters after committing, I'm good, I feel good, body's 100% ready to go. And I think what he brings to St. John's is the scoring pop that they desperately needed, okay? We talked a little bit about the RJ Lewis situation on Sunday's show. Again, that's another conversation. We'll save it for another day. I don't think Rick Pitino is all that upset, and I think they wanted a little bit more consistent scoring from the perimeter, and I think Bryce Hopkins is kind of that inside-outside guy. Like I said, 16 points a game at his best. This was 2-3 seasons ago now, to go along with 8 boards, but more importantly, for a guy that's 6'7", 6'8", and physical in the paint, also a guy that shoots the ball pretty well, 36% three-point shooter back in the 2023 season, hit at a clip of about 40% this year before he goes down with that season-ending injury after he tried to come back. And so I just bring it up because that is a team that desperately needed more perimeter scoring, but he's also a guy that can play down low, defend 4s, sometimes defend 5s, and I think he matches very nicely with Zuby Ejiofor. We know Zuby Ejiofor, all Big East player, unbelievable talent. Now you have Bryce Hopkins that can shoot the 3, stretch the floor. I like him. Josan Sanan, by the way, is another one. I know I just mentioned him a minute ago, but he kind of provides that athleticism, that slashing, that scoring. So I like what Rick Pitino has done so far. I really do, adding more, not so much athleticism, but scoring to that team. Again, most of it will be built around Zuby Ejiofor, so we will see what happens, but do like what Rick Pitino has done so far this offseason. Let's keep it going. This is an interesting one, to say the least. I don't know how to be diplomatic. Donovan Thomas Jr., we talked about him in our first portal segment before the portal even opened. Remember, he was at UNLV. He was able to enter the portal before it opened because UNLV fired Coach Kevin Kruger. Well, when before the portal opens, he enters, and you think, okay, he was recruited by Florida, he was recruited by Gonzaga, he was recruited by UCLA coming out of high school, former 5-star. Maybe UCLA doesn't make sense. They just took Donovan Dent, but is it going to be Florida? They need a bunch of guys. Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? On Monday night, in what I would call the biggest shocker of portal season so far, he chooses the LSU Tigers, okay? So first of all, I'll say this. He is a very talented player, a little bit on the smaller side, 6'1", 6'2", but this is a kid that scored double digits in 22 games, had 20 or more 5 points this season, basically averaged about 15 points, 4.5, 5 assists on the year. And like I said, was really, in my opinion, one of the better players in the portal. I assumed he would transfer up to the high major level. I just didn't think it would be LSU. Now, listen, I'm never going to criticize a kid, take away his moment. I think it's interesting. We know that Matt McMahon, the head coach, was retained and promised more NIL money. I assume this kid, I don't even assume, I actually know it pretty well, that he is going to get paid very handsomely to be an LSU Tiger. This is one that I think they wanted to get done. Here's the money. Here's the deal. Take it or leave it, whatever. But credit Matt McMahon. Listen, next year's a make or break year. If he doesn't make the tournament, he ain't coming back. It was funny. I'll say this, a little bit of a side note. Was talking to somebody about the Buzz Williams Maryland stuff on Tuesday afternoon. And he said the thing about the SEC now, it's no longer enough to just make the NCAA tournament. You got to win games when you get there. Alabama just made a Final Four. Auburn's in the Final Four. Florida's in the Final Four. And so for LSU, they need a spark. They need it in a hurry. I'm just here to tell you, this is one of the best players in the portal. So congrats to Matt McMahon for getting it done. I'm a little bit surprised. Doesn't mean it can't work. They also added the big guy from Mississippi State, Owoku, I believe is his name. So they're doing their work early. And I'm curious to see what kind of roster they can put around this kid. It's interesting to note, you look across the SEC, as great as it was this year, a lot of teams losing a lot of talent. Auburn's losing basically everybody. Ole Miss is basically losing everybody. Texas A&M is going to be starting over from scratch. New head coach at Texas. Kentucky loses a ton. Can LSU slide from team 14, 15, 16 to team like 7, 8, 9, make an NCAA tournament? Getting a kid like this certainly helps. Let's keep it going. This is one that is certainly interesting. A guy that you have certainly seen plenty of during NCAA tournament, Elliot Cadeau of North Carolina. And unfortunately, you haven't seen plenty of him. You haven't seen plenty of him playing in the NCAA tournament. But of course, he's on that crazy commercial. I got the band song stuck in my head. But he enters the portal. He's been on that commercial in Carolina gear. He enters the portal. Listen, we talked about it last week. In a lot of ways, I actually feel bad for him. You listen to his comments after the season, it kind of felt like North Carolina just said, we're going in a different direction. Sorry. But he is still a really good college basketball player, even though I think that he's a little bit, there's some limitations to him. But 6'1", former McDonald's All-American, well, not former McDonald's All-American because he reclassified. But he did average just under 10 points and over 6 assists per game in ACC play this year. 34% three-point shooter. The big thing is he's just a little bit on the smaller side, 6'1", like I said. And so if he can get that three-point shot consistently, he actually is pretty good value to the team that he is joining, which is Michigan. I think it's also worth noting with Michigan, Trey Donaldson, producer Matt, you know him well, Auburn Tigers, entered the portal on Tuesday. So it looks like Michigan felt like they needed to upgrade at the point guard position. It looks like they have with Elliot Cadeau. Really quickly, a couple more names to know. This one just broke while we're recording here, so we'll try to be quick and we'll try to react in real time. But Daylen, we'll get to him next. Okay, I apologize. Let's get to, I do want to get to my guy here. This is one of my favorite players in the portal, Adrien Wooley, okay? Adrien Wooley commits to Louisville on Monday afternoon. All the days are running together. Forgive me. By the way, again, I'll be in San Antonio late Wednesday, live shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday on. Adrien Wooley. So it's funny. You start doing this portal stuff. You know a little bit about everybody, but you don't really know. I dove into some tape of Adrien Wooley over the weekend, and I was like, oh my goodness, this kid is good. Just finished his freshman year at Kennesaw State. How about this? The CUSA Freshman of the Year. Averaged 18.8 points per game, third in the league. And oh, by the way, also hit on top of it about 41% from three and 3.5 assists per game as well. So as a true freshman in college basketball, 18 points, 3.5 assists, and 41% three-point shooting as a true freshman. 6'6", big guard. And what's crazy about this, he's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, okay? So a Final Four of Alabama, Auburn, Kansas, and Louisville. And Pat Kelsey gets it done. Listen, I love this fit. It's one of my favorite fits in all of college. It's one of my favorite commits so far in college basketball. Big guard. We saw what Pat Kelsey can do with those big guards this year with Terrence Edwards, with Chucky Hepburn. And here's the best part. Just finished his freshman year. He may be an NBA dude sometime down the road, but it's probably not going to be next year. So you get him in your program. It could be a 2-3 year relationship with him. You see it. If these kids perform at the highest levels, they don't transfer back down. Walter Clayton got to Florida last year, was really good, was even better this year. So this is a kid I think can have a major impact at Louisville. I love the fit. Credit Pat Kelsey, gets the job done. I don't know what else there is to say. Just a great, great, great commitment. Really, really, really talented player. So this is the one now. Let's get to the next one that just broke while we were on air. Daylen Swain does commit to Sean Miller and the now Texas Longhorns. Okay, that's going to take a little bit of familiarity to get familiar with. But Daylen Swain, we talked about him when he entered the portal. 6'8", super athletic. Not a great shooter, but listen, he's one of these kids. If he shot the three ball 41%, he'd be in the NBA right now. But Sean Miller has had a track record since he got to Xavier of kind of finding these under-recruited guys, getting them to play at a big-time level at Xavier. Did it with Des Claude 2 years ago. Daylen Swain this year, 11.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game. The three-point shot needs to be better. But what did I tell you when this kid entered? I said, this is a kid that he's going to be able to transfer up. And again, we don't know dollar amounts on any of these guys, but my guess would be he's a seven-figure kind of player. And so part of the reason why Sean Miller left Xavier for Texas was because he was losing these kind of players to bigger programs with bigger budgets. Well, now he goes to Texas. He gets to keep them. He gets to keep them on the roster. I believe, unless I missed something, the first commitment of the Sean Miller era at Texas. Promise it won't be the last. Really quickly, the two other big commits from the last couple days, and again, this stuff is always subject to change, so please forgive me. But let's go ahead and talk about Baylor. Baylor got two commitments on Monday, and it's interesting. Baylor's kind of in this cycle now where they bring in older fourth, fifth-year guys with 1 year of eligibility. Last year, they bring in Norchad Omier. Last year, they bring in Jeremy Roach. Remember, Baylor had a bunch of NIL money available after Scott Drew turned down Louisville and Kentucky in the same offseason. And so I only bring it up because what ends up happening is they bring in Jeremy Roach, they bring in Norchad Omier, they got to replace him. Well, they just did it in a big way on Monday with a pair of commitments. The first one, point guard Obi Agbim, excuse me. We'll work on that name before the season, okay? Torres, a lot of names flying at me here during portal season. 16 points, 3.5 assists, 43% shooting from three. Interesting kid, JUCO star, goes to Wyoming. Wyoming actually has the weird midsummer coaching change, but sticks it out and was an all-Mountain West kind of dude. Really, really, really athletic, big guard. I know when he entered the portal, he was a guy that Kentucky was really interested in earlier. Basically, everybody was kind of interested in. But I just bring it up because Baylor gets him to replace Jeremy Roach. And then Michael Rataj from Oregon State. By the way, Baylor fans are going to kill me on these pronunciations. I apologize. I'm going on like no hour sleep. I'm just portal 24/7, okay? There's the 24/7 sports. Like, I should be working for them. I'm happy working for myself, but it's 24/7 portal for me. But Michael Rataj was at Oregon State. Very coveted big man, 16 points per game this season. And about 8-9 boards a game. And he enters the portal. I think Arkansas really desperately wanted him. Baylor gets it done, but Baylor has their two guys going forward. All right, I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I am fried. It is time for me to get out of here. If you are not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. And as always, make sure you're following on social media. At Aaron_Torres on Twitter. At Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. We'll be back. Probably nothing on Wednesday, but Thursday we will be in San Antonio. Be on the Riverwalk. We'll be wearing a cowboy hat. I don't know what we'll be doing. Eating some Tex-Mex. I don't know. But we'll be back. Full show Thursday. We really, at that point, will probably start to look ahead to the Final Four. Next episode, Aaron Torres Pod.